My name is Meltori Franca, and I'm the author of Leaving Wishville and Capsule. I'm super excited to announce that Leaving Wishville, my debut novel that I published at the age of 17, has been translated into Spanish. The Spanish ebook is going to be released on October 23rd of 2021. If you're watching this video and you happen to speak Spanish, that means you have the opportunity to read the Spanish edition of Leaving Wishville for free right now, but more about that at the end. First, let me tell you a little bit more about the story. Leaving Wishville follows the story of 14-year-old Benji Marino, who grows up in a town called Wishville. In this town, everyone who's left has never returned, including Benji's father. Because of this, everyone believes that the outside world is unsurvivable, but Benji questions their reasoning. With time against him, he must leave town before it's too late, but it also means abandoning everyone that he loves. Leaving Wishville is categorized under the magical realism genre. It contains light supernatural elements as well as a very interpretive ending. So if that's your style, I think you'll enjoy this story. Before I talk about how you can get your free copy, allow me to introduce you to two people who have helped make this translation possible. First, our translator, and second, our editor.
Hi, I'm Sungwon Kim, a 14-year-old Korean translator, writer, social entrepreneur, and swimmer who lives in Peru. I am also Lost Island Press's content creator, and I'm currently working on my debut novel. Translation has always been a huge part of my life. Having learned Korean from my parents, Spanish from my surroundings, and English from school, by kindergarten, I was trilingual. French and Latin were later added to my still growing list of languages. Because of my linguistic knowledge, I was often asked to translate short messages and text documents, and as my experiences with translation piled up, I soon began translating for humanitarian aid campaigns and for non-profit organizations, and I eventually became a translator at Lost Island Press. In early 2021, I reached out to Mel with the idea of getting Leaving Wishville translated with the goal of helping Benji's story reach a wider audience. After making some agreements, I started translating Leaving Wishville on February 19th. At that time, I was visiting my family in Korea, so my schedule was pretty packed and I didn't have a lot of time to dedicate to this project. However, once I returned to Peru in March, things really started getting serious. My schedule pretty much revolved around this project. I would wake up at 6 a.m., work on the Spanish edition of Leaving Wishville for 2 hours before starting on my other responsibilities, and then I would continue translating Leaving Wishville until late in the night. I even pulled several all-nighters, and this definitely paid off. I finished the first draft around April and the second draft in May. I became so attached to the characters that they almost felt like they were my own. It was so much different from when I read Leaving Wishville for the first time. I especially grew fond of Oliver and really related to him. It was so hard letting go of Chloe, James, Sam, and Benji and the rest of the characters once I finished draft 2. Translating Leaving Wishville was a challenge that I thoroughly enjoyed. And although it wasn't easy, all the hard work paid off, and I can't wait to see what's in store for Benji's story.
Hola, mi nombre es María Grecia Guapaya, tengo 15 años y soy una estudiante de tercero secundaria de Perú. Actualmente me estoy enfocando en explorar mis habilidades e intereses para ser capaz de escoger una carrera correcta para mí, además de crear nuevas experiencias en las cosas en las que me considero buena. Eso fue lo que me llevó a Lost Island Press. Empecé a aprender inglés aproximadamente a los 3 años, lo que me permitió tener flexibilidad tanto en el español como en el inglés. Esto me dio ciertas oportunidades de las cuales yo no me había percatado cuando era niño. Sin embargo, ahora que estoy más cerca de la universidad, me di cuenta que una carrera enfocada en los idiomas es lo que quiero para mi futuro. La carrera de traducción, para ser más específica. Me contacté con Mel después de ver información sobre Adiós Wishville en una historia de Instagram de Sowon, a mediados de junio, y esperaba poder ser parte del equipo de traducción en un futuro libro o proyecto. A pesar de que la parte de traducción ya había sido finalizada, me ofrecieron ser parte del proceso de edición, lo que me dio el conocimiento que necesitaba para prepararme y además fue muy interesante. Para ser completamente honesta, yo disfruté bastante de este libro. Fue muy entretenido y además fue emocionante ser parte de este proyecto, considerando que fue el primer proyecto en el que he participado, al menos de este estilo. Así que por eso siempre lo llevaré conmigo. Al inicio me dio un poco de problema mantenerme al ritmo esperado para finalizar el libro. en la ficha que me propusieron. Pero me las pude arreglar teniendo en cuenta de que la lectura siempre ha sido parte de mi vida, entonces lo disfruté mucho. Bueno, con respecto a Benji, él es un personaje muy hermoso y en cierta forma siento que me puedo identificar con él. Siempre quiere más de lo que se puede ver a simple vista. Es curioso y terco y creo que fue uno de los motivos por los cuales me agradó tanto su personaje y lo admiro un poco. Bueno, bastante. El resto del grupo, James, Sam y Chloe, eran muy realísticos. Eran personas reales con problemas reales. Que eso es algo muy complicado de encontrar en un libro actualmente. Al menos esa es mi opinión. Y creo que yo pienso que ese es el motivo por los cuales ellos a mí me agradaron tanto. Me gustó la interacción que ellos tenían. Y bueno, yo recuerdo estar en la última página, debatiendo entre si debía leerla o no, a pesar de que ya sabía la respuesta lógica. Alice Wishfield me dio unas cuantas complicaciones al inicio, ya que la edición para mí era completamente nueva y aún estaba tratando de averiguar cómo funcionaba todo. A pesar de este pequeño contratiempo que tuve, puedo decir que disfruté mucho de la historia de Benji y de mi experiencia editando el libro. Y honestamente deseo de que pueda llegar a cada vez más personas.
I would also like to shout out our small group of proofreaders who have helped to make sure that the Spanish edition of Leaving Wishville turned out to be as polished as possible. I have had such a wonderful time working with all of these talented people on bringing the Spanish edition of Leaving Wishville to life. I cannot wait to share it with you. It has also been so much fun because I wrote the first draft of Leaving Wishville when I was 14 years old, and then I published the book when I was 17. So this is very much a sentimental story to me, and it will always hold a special place in my heart, and it's just so nice to get to read through parts of the book again and kind of revisit the story, and I can't wait to share this book with a brand new audience. At the moment, we are only planning to release an ebook, but if there is enough interest, we may choose to release a paperback and hardcover version in the future. And of course, if you don't speak Spanish, the English version will always be available online, practically anywhere, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. I'm going to have a link to more information about Leaving Wishville in the description box below. There is a page on the Lost Island Press website with tons of cool stuff about Leaving Wishville, including some fun quizzes, so I highly recommend you check that out if you're interested. Anyways, now for the fun part. If you are a Spanish speaker and you're interested in a free ebook of Leaving Wishville Spanish edition, I will have a link in the description box below where you can apply as an ARC reader. Current members of our Lost Island Press VIP list will have priority in receiving free ebooks. All we ask is that if you are accepted, in exchange you leave an honest review online before the Spanish edition's official release on October 23rd. Once again, if you would like to learn more, please click the link in the description box below and fill out the application form. There's also some extra notes that may be helpful there in understanding how the whole process works. But anyways, thank you so much for being here on the Lost Island Press YouTube channel, and I will see you in the next video.